June 4th, 1940, just after dawn. The beaches outside Dunkirk are still smoking. The tide creeps in quietly, lapping against steel that was never meant to touch seawater. A British truck lies half-buried in wet sand, its canvas torn, its fuel tank punctured by shrapnel. Nearby, artillery pieces sit abandoned, their barrels tilted skyward like frozen screams. The air smells of cordite, oil, and salt. Seagulls circle where men were dying only hours ago. A German officer stands still amid the wreckage. He does not look like a conqueror. His boots are muddy, his field cap is pulled low. In his hand is a clipboard already stained with seawater. He is a quartermaster, a logistics officer attached to General Erwin Rommel's 7th Panzer Division, the same division the newspapers are calling Gespenster Division, the Ghost Division, because it moves faster than maps can be drawn. But here, on this beach, speed means nothing. He steps around a burned-out Bren carrier and pauses at a row of fuel cans stacked neatly beside a disabled lorry. British cans, American steel, perfectly stamped. He bends, knocks one with his knuckle. Full. He makes a mark on the clipboard. Then another. Then another. All along the beach, the same pattern repeats. Trucks left intact, crates unopened. Fuel dumped not because it was useless, but because there was no room left on the boats. You can almost hear it in the silence, the sound of an industrial giant shrugging and walking away. The quartermaster straightens and looks down the coastline. The scale is impossible to take in at once. Miles of equipment, thousands of vehicles, enough material to supply an army for months, abandoned without ceremony. Behind him, German soldiers cheer and pose for photographs. Dunkirk has become a word that tastes like victory. France is collapsing. Britain has fled. The war, many believe, is nearly over. But the quartermaster does not smile. He walks inland, past British ration boxes stamped with dates extending deep into the future. He opens one. Chocolate, tea, tinned meat. Items German soldiers haven't seen in months. He closes it carefully, as if touching something sacred. This is not carelessness, he realizes. This is confidence. By mid-morning, he reaches a field turned into a vehicle graveyard. Hundreds of trucks, Bedfords, Morrises, Leylands, parked wheel to wheel. Some are damaged, many are not. Fuel tanks still half full. Tires intact, spare parts stacked nearby. He starts counting again. His pencil moves faster now, not because he's excited, but because something is tightening in his chest. Germany's supply columns, he knows, look nothing like this. Back east, behind the Panzer spearheads, the Reich's logistics crawl forward on horse-drawn wagons. More than half the German army still depends on animals. Each horse needs fodder, each wagon breaks down, each mile stretches the system thinner. Fuel is rationed down to the liter, spare parts are scavenged, repaired, reused, until they fail catastrophically. Here, the British have left behind more trucks than some German corps possess in total. The quartermaster stops counting fuel cans and starts estimating tonnage. It is then, the moment no victory parade will ever record, that the realization begins to form. If the British can abandon this much, what can they produce? He thinks of factories in Birmingham, Detroit, Ontario, assembly lines that do not sleep, steel poured not in batches but rivers, oil fields across oceans, convoys already forming, even now beyond the horizon. The German army has won a campaign, but standing on this beach, the quartermaster sees a war. A war of replacement, a war of endurance, a war of logistics. He flips to the back of his clipboard and begins a different kind of calculation, not what has been captured, but what this capture implies. How long could Germany replace losses at this scale? How many trucks could German industry build while British industry shrugs off Dunkirk as a temporary inconvenience? How many horses would it take to haul what engines move effortlessly? A gust of wind scatters sand across his boots. Somewhere an officer shouts orders. The machinery of occupation is already beginning. But the quartermaster remains frozen, staring at a single abandoned fuel can. He knows something now that most men celebrating Dunkirk do not. The war will not be decided by how fast armies move, but who can afford to leave everything behind and come back stronger. That night, as reports are typed and victories tallied, his figures will sit quietly on a page. No exclamation points, no medals, just numbers. And numbers, he understands, are about to doom the Reich. June 4th, 1940, late evening. A requisitioned schoolhouse outside Dunkirk. The lights flicker as a generator coughs and steadies. Chalk dust still coats the blackboards. Children's drawings of farm animals hang crookedly on the walls. Now the desks are covered with maps, fuel ledgers, and half-empty mugs of ersatz coffee. The quartermaster sits alone. His name does not appear in history books. Men like him rarely do. He is a Hauptmann, a captain by rank, trained not in tactics but in totals, liters, tons, kilometers, consumption rates. He sharpens his pencil with a small knife and begins to rewrite his figures cleanly, carefully. Outside, Dunkirk burns softly against the night sky. He starts with what he can prove. Captured fuel, tens of thousands of cans, enough on paper to keep Rommel's panzers moving for weeks. Captured trucks, hundreds serviceable, more repairable. Ammunition, rations, tires, spare engines still packed in grease. A lesser man would see abundance. The quartermaster sees a baseline. He flips to a blank page and draws two columns. On the left, German Army. On the right, British Expeditionary Force. Under German Army, he writes, fuel allocation per Panzer Division, strictly rationed. Motor transport availability, insufficient. Supply backbone, horse-drawn wagons. Replacement capacity, limited, regionally constrained. Under British, his pencil hesitates. He writes what he has just witnessed. Fuel, expendable. Vehicles, replaceable. Supplies, abundant enough to abandon. He taps the pencil against the paper. This is not how defeated armies behave. The quartermaster thinks back to the march through France, to German columns halted for lack of fuel, while British units, retreating, supposedly broken, still managed coordinated withdrawals. Trucks burned, not because fuel was scarce, but because time was. Time. That is the resource Germany never has enough of. He opens a logistics manual and begins running projections. If Germany fights Britain alone, perhaps the imbalance can be managed. Perhaps. But Britain is not alone, not truly. The empire stretches across oceans, and beyond the empire lies something even larger, even more terrifying in its potential. The United States. Neutral for now. Officially distant. But every British fuel can he counted today was stamped with American steel standards. Every truck design spoke of mass production, of interchangeable parts, of factories capable of turning loss into inconvenience. Germany, by contrast, builds weapons like heirlooms, each tank model slightly different, each engine requiring specialized parts, each breakdown a small disaster. He remembers reports from Poland, panzers immobilized, not by enemy fire, but by worn clutches and cracked suspension springs. You can almost feel the weight of it pressing on him. Wars, he knows, are not won by brilliance alone. They are won by flow, Fuel flowing forward, ammunition arriving on time, replacement vehicles appearing as if by magic. And magic the Reich does not possess. He hears laughter outside, officers celebrating. Someone has found a crate of British whiskey. The war feels young tonight, optimistic. The maps still show arrows racing westward. The quartermaster closes his ledger and leans back. In Berlin, speeches will soon be made about destiny and willpower, about the weakness of democracies, about enemies who lack the stomach for sacrifice. But democracies, he has just seen, can sacrifice things instead of men. They can abandon mountains of steel to save time and build new mountains tomorrow. Germany cannot. He writes a final line at the bottom of the page, not as an official conclusion, but as a private truth. If this war becomes a contest of production, Germany must win quickly or not at all. He knows what comes next. The war will not end with France. Britain will fight on. The Reich will be tempted, inevitably, to strike eastward, toward resources, toward oil, toward grain, toward distance. And distance is the enemy of logistics. The generator sputters again. For a moment, the room goes dark. In that brief blackness, the quartermaster imagines endless roads stretching east, supply wagons thinning, fuel gauges dropping, engines stalling far from home. When the lights return, he closes the ledger. Somewhere, Erwin Rommel is already planning the next advance, convinced speed can outrun supply problems, just as it always has. The quartermaster gathers his papers, knowing something Rommel does not yet want to hear. Speed does not defeat arithmetic. In arithmetic, once written, never forgets. May 20th, 1941. Dawn. A dirt road near the Libyan-Egyptian border. The engine noise dies, one vehicle at a time. First a half-track, then a truck, then finally a Panzer III rolls to a stop, its crew climbing out into the pale desert light. The sun is barely up, but the heat is already rising from the sand in shimmering waves. Fuel gauges sit just above empty. This is Rommel's world now. The Africa Corps has been moving for days, outrunning British expectations, overrunning positions that should have held for weeks. The newspapers back home will soon call it genius. They will say Rommel fights like lightning, that he bends reality through audacity alone. But here, on this road, the Ghost Division is starving. A supply officer argues quietly with a tank commander. The numbers don't change. There is no fuel. The nearest depot is hundreds of kilometers behind them. The Italian supply columns are late again. Their trucks break down. Their fuel arrives contaminated with sand. Their ports cannot unload fast enough. Rommel arrives in his command vehicle, dust coating his goggles. He steps out, surveys the stalled column and scowls. He has seen this before, in France too. But there, the enemy's depots lay just ahead. Here, the desert offers nothing. No abandoned fuel cans, no truck parks, no industrial giant shrugging off losses. Only distance. You can almost hear the desert laughing. Rommel orders fuel siphoned from every immobilized vehicle to keep a handful of panzers moving. Wounded tanks feed healthy ones. Trucks are cannibalized without ceremony. It is a temporary solution, brilliant, ruthless, unsustainable. The quartermasters know it. Somewhere in the supply chain, a familiar calculation is being repeated. Kilometers versus liters, consumption versus delivery, and once again, the numbers refuse to cooperate. The British retreat, yes, but they retreat toward ports, toward warehouses, toward ships that connect them to an empire. Each mile Rommel advances stretches his lifeline thinner. Fuel trucks burn almost as much fuel reaching the front as they deliver. This is logistics fighting back. Rommel pushes anyway. He always does. In Berlin, planners reassure themselves. Once Malta is neutralized, once the Mediterranean lanes are secure, supply will improve. Once Egypt falls, the Suez will solve everything. Always the solution lies just one victory away. But the quartermasters see the truth written in dust. The Africa Corps does not lack courage, it lacks mass. British tanks destroyed today will be replaced tomorrow. American factories, now fully awake, are churning out trucks by the tens of thousands, standardized, reliable, designed to cross continents. Germany is still building masterpieces, and masterpieces break just as easily as anything else. By late morning, Rommel has forced the column forward again. The attack continues, the legend grows, but every advance consumes irreplaceable fuel. Every breakdown leaves a ghost on the roadside. Every success deepens the problem it cannot solve. The desert remembers everything, and far away, on a quiet beach in France, the arithmetic first written at Dunkirk is finally coming due.
January 16, 1942. 3:40 a.m., Detroit, Michigan. The factory does not sleep. Steam rises from open doors into the frozen night. Inside, the floor trembles as presses slam steel into shape. Conveyors rattle forward in perfect rhythm. Men and women move with practiced efficiency, guided by lights, whistles, and clipboards. A bell rings. Another truck rolls off the line. Then another. Then another. This is the part of the war no German soldier will ever see. Across the Atlantic, planners in Washington and London are no longer asking if they can outproduce the Axis, but by how much. The answer grows larger every week. American industry has been unshackled, retooled, simplified. Designs are standardized, components are interchangeable. If a truck breaks down, another replaces it before the dust settles. The British call it the arsenal of democracy. The Germans will call it something else. On the Eastern Front, winter is killing engines faster than enemy fire. Oil thickens, rubber cracks, vehicles freeze solid overnight. Supply columns stretch hundreds of kilometers across roads that barely exist. Horses collapse in the snow, their bodies dragged aside to clear the way. Every loss is permanent. Every replacement is delayed. You can almost feel the front grinding to a halt. At headquarters, German officers argue over priorities: tanks or trucks, aircraft or fuel. Each choice steals from another front. Each solution creates a new shortage. The war has expanded faster than the supply system ever could. Meanwhile, Allied convoys cross oceans in endless lines. Ships are sunk, but more are launched. Crews lost, but more are trained. The flow never stops. This is the avalanche the quartermaster glimpsed at Dunkirk. Not an explosion, a pressure, a weight that never lifts. In North Africa, Rommel is forced onto the defensive. In Russia, entire armies outrun their supplies and die where they stand. In the skies, the Luftwaffe finds itself rationing flight hours while Allied pilots train endlessly. The Reich still fights brilliantly, but brilliance cannot refuel an empty tank. By 1943, German factories are working around the clock yet still falling behind. Bombers hammer production centers, rail lines fracture, fuel becomes precious beyond measure. Synthetic plants are targeted relentlessly. The war has become exactly what the quartermaster feared, a contest of endurance. And Germany is running out of breath. August 8, 1944. 0630 hours. A hedgerow near Mortain, Normandy. The fog lifts slowly, revealing a battlefield already decided. German panzers sit motionless beneath the apple trees, their camouflage nets hanging limp. Crews crouch beside them, helmets off, listening. Not for enemy movement, but for engines that will not start. Fuel is gone.
A mechanic bangs uselessly on an engine block. Another crew siphons the last drops from a staff car. The attack, Operation Luttich, Hitler's desperate counterstroke, is stalled before it truly begins. Above them, the sky roars. Allied aircraft pour in, wave after wave. Thunderbolts and typhoons dive with impunity, rockets screaming, cannons tearing steel apart. The German soldiers cannot move, they cannot disperse, they cannot hide. They are targets pinned by arithmetic. Somewhere in the chaos, an aging quartermaster, perhaps the same man, perhaps another who learned the lesson too late, watches the columns burn. He does not curse the pilots, he does not curse fate. He curses numbers written years ago and ignored. Every Allied tank destroyed here will be replaced within weeks. Every German tank lost is a wound that never truly heals. Rail lines are shattered, fuel trains are intercepted, synthetic plants lie in ruins. Even if a vehicle survives the battle, it may never move again. You can almost feel the war slowing to a crawl. In Berlin, reality finally intrudes. Orders grow frantic, fuel allocations are measured in minutes of movement, units are told to conserve ammunition, as if conservation could reverse time. But the Allies do not conserve. They advance behind walls of supply, trucks stacked nose to tail from the beaches to the front, mobile workshops, floating depots, fuel pipelines laid across the French countryside as casually as telephone wire. This is what Dunkirk made possible, the ability to lose everything and keep going. As Normandy breaks open and Paris falls, the German army retreats not for lack of courage, but for lack of fuel, parts, and time. Soldiers march where vehicles once carried them. Guns are abandoned not because they are broken, but because horses are gone. The war ends the way it was always going to end, not with a single catastrophic defeat, but with exhaustion, the kind no speech can fix.
May 7th, 1945. Evening. A dim office in Flensburg, northern Germany. The room is quiet except for the scratch of a pen. Outside, the Reich is finished. The radios speak of surrender in careful, hollow phrases. Units are laying down arms. Columns of prisoners move westward under white flags. The war has collapsed inward on itself. At a narrow desk, a German officer signs a final inventory report. There is almost nothing left to count. No fuel worth mentioning, no serviceable armored reserves, rail lines shattered beyond quick repair, horses long since eaten, lost, or frozen into the ground of distant fronts. The ledger that once tracked thousands of tons now measures scraps. The officer pauses, pen hovering. You can almost imagine him remembering another desk, another ledger, another coastline. Dunkirk. The beach, the fuel cans, the trucks left behind as if they meant nothing at all. At the time, it felt like victory, proof of enemy weakness, evidence that willpower and speed had triumphed over caution. But now, with the war finished, the meaning is unmistakable. Dunkirk was not a miracle for Britain, it was a warning for Germany. A warning that this war would not be won by daring maneuvers or brilliant generals alone, but by factories, oil fields, railways, and ports, by the ability to absorb loss and answer it with more. Germany never solved that problem. It chased resources across continents instead of building systems. It relied on genius instead of depth, on precision instead of redundancy, on horses in an age of engines. The officer signs the report and closes the folder. Outside, Allied trucks rumble past endlessly, headlights cutting through the dusk. They look new, clean, interchangeable,
as if the war itself could be restarted tomorrow. He knows now what the quartermaster on the beach knew then. You can win battles with courage, you can win campaigns with speed, but you can only win a world war with logistics. The ledger is closed. The arithmetic is final.